Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's Van University webinar, where we'll be talking about the importance of your outbound messaging practices with consumers.
The things to focus on this is what is the intent of the message, what is the length of the message, and are the methods that we're using, are they being driven to maximize the results? When the message is sent, is it generating the kind of response that you're looking for? And the response that we're looking for should ultimately be whatever is the preferred method of communication.
Ultimately, the goal is to get the appointment. That's why we're doing what we're doing, and your message needs to achieve that goal.
So the calls to action we see right there, so call, text, visit the dealer, or visit the website. So we see that some dealers, based on staffing, based on availability for timing, they may opt to do a text. Best practice would be to ultimately to generate a phone call, but with the outbound text message that we're sending.
Calls to action, your immediate, I'd say your original point of communication typically is going to occur through an outbound call or text message. Those are typically how you're initiating communication.
Yeah, so the calls to action really is you're looking to trigger a response based on the action that you do. So if you look at the vehicle details pages on websites like our friends at Dealer Inspire, they know the significance of driving a very targeted and tailored action based on whatever the suggestion of the trigger is. So on the vehicle details page, you're looking at focusing down to driving one form of action would be simply to click for more information or a phone call. What you won't often see in modern websites are a list of additional buttons to click, such as fill out the credit application, fill out multiple forms, walk around. They're typically tailored down to one or two functions as opposed to many as it used to be.
Here's an example of your old dealer that you worked for, Toyota of Naperville, and we're looking at a VDP. You see the price, and I really have two options. I can call or basically check a button or click a button to check availability.
Right. So you want to have a targeted call to action. So if you say to call, text me, visit my website, or visit the dealership with the address, often if consumers have too many options, if there's too many choices, they may not make any. And that's why the sign that you had showed before, showing all the different directions, it may be too many options, and they're more inclined to select none.
Exactly.
And actually, I learned this from when I had worked at the dealership and worked with Proactive Dealer Solutions. They would come in and they'd make it pretty clear that if you want a consumer to make a selection, you give them fewer choices. Mm-hmm. So in the example that was shared with me is if I was asked, where do you want to go for lunch? The choices may be numerous. Now, if I said, do you want to go for kebabs or for pizza, making two selections or two options is a lot easier to make one single selection. You don't need to tell the story through text message because ultimately it is a text. It should be just a very short, concise. If I were to receive the text message on the left, I likely would not act at all.
Yeah, because you're like, well, what am I? What? It looks like an ad.
Right.
It's like a text ad.
So, and the one on the right is down to one option. So it's ask a question: Is the vehicle available? And then it prompts to call. So when you control or suggest how the consumers or the sellers communicate with you, you get to then prioritize, in this case, it'd be to call because the dealer on the right prefers the communication on the phone.
So I think the question is your message, as you say, driving that desired method of communication?
Yes. Yeah, it's ultimately, as this shows, keeping the message short. So, yeah, is it driving the desired method of communication? So, as we just said, phones are one option, text, visit the dealership, or visit a website. So, the desired method of communication will be determined by the dealership staff. If they have a limited staff, certainly phone calls may not be an option if they cannot simply get to the phone. So, they may prefer to communicate through text message. Or if they have an even smaller staff, they may prefer to bypass the communication at all and suggest that the sellers go to the website or directly into the dealership. So the call to action will determine how those sellers do communicate with the dealership. If you ask a question, you'll get a response, and it'll be determined based on what you're requesting. So the first one is, you can see the best practice. The calls to action is limited down to 1 or 2. The sellers are more likely to make a selection, and you also, again, you encourage the communication method. So if the preference is to call, ask a question, simply call. Or if you ask a question without prompting them to call, they will often reply back with that answer. Or if you simply direct them to the website or to the dealership.
And what about when I'm on the phone? What are some ideas when I'm, engaging with the private sellers on the phone?
Yeah, so on the phone, you can tell the story. So again, the same thing, identify who you are, let them know what your intent is, and tell the story to build some value in why they should be dealing with the dealership. So this allows you an opportunity to tell them that you do buy cars. Your intent is not to lure them in the door to trade the vehicle. It is actually to acquire and purchase their vehicle. So, and the ultimate purpose of that phone call should be to simply make an appointment. So you don't want to actually acquire the vehicle over the phone, because you can't, but the same rules for best practices for BDCs for sales applies to this. So the reason you want to use the phone is to simply make the appointment. It allows you to use positive emotions, allows you to be passionate about acquiring the car and letting the consumer know why they should be doing business with your organization. That also allows you to expedite the process. So you can speed the process up as opposed to exchanging text messages over a long period of time. You can expedite very quickly.
The path in this case is you're using text messages to get them on the phone, and then using the phone to ultimately get them into the store?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a series of things you can accomplish, whatever communication method you're using. So the intent for the outbound communication is just to ignite that initial response, and that initial response or that action, again, would be to ultimately drive the outcome of the appointment, to get the consumer in the store, to then provide the value options and how you can assist that seller in selling the car. So to recap, so as we suggest, 1 to 2 calls to action, preferably 1, going to be to primarily, if available, phone, in short messages, and then ultimately get to the phone. So the phones are your best, it's the best form of communication to get the outcome of making an appointment.
All right, good. Well, I think that's it for questions. Went through everything. Again, folks, thanks for joining us today on Van University, monthly best practices and training webinar. Ryan Girardi and Tom Gregg, I'm going to go ahead and shut things down, and we'll see you all next month.